Some people carry hearts that hurt others and never feel it. They take advantage of your silence, mock your kindness, and pretend to be innocent while slowly poisoning your peace. Islam teaches us compassion, yes, but not foolishness, not blindness. You were never meant to destroy your emotional and spiritual well-being in the name of being kind to everyone. If the Prophet himself distanced from toxic hearts, then who are you trying to please by enduring people who quietly ruin your life? Kindness is noble, but Islam doesn't ask you to hand it to people who abuse it. If someone lies, cheats, manipulates, or spreads harm, it is not piety to tolerate them endlessly. In fact, Allah warns us in the Quran not to incline towards the oppressors, or else we'll be touched by the fire. That's not harsh. That's divine justice, because you matter too. Your peace, your dignity, your soul, all of that matters in Islam. The Prophet was never weak in mercy, but he was firm in justice. He forgave, but not at the cost of truth. He smiled, but he also walked away from those who mocked the message. And in his final sermon, he reminded us that every Muslim is sacred. Their blood, their wealth, their honor, that includes you. Protecting yourself from those who abuse your goodness is not selfishness, it's obedience. There's a difference between kindness and naivety. Islam doesn't expect you to be naive. The Quran describes the believers as humble with each other, but strong and firm against those who deal in falsehood. You don't have to keep showing up for people who never show up for you, spiritually or emotionally. And just because you love peace doesn't mean you should tolerate injustice dressed in sweet words. Allah doesn't reward silent suffering in the hands of people who sin boldly. He rewards the one who walks away from harm for His sake, even if it means being alone for a while. That's not bitterness. That's bravery. That's belief. You were never created to be a doormat for the world. Islam teaches you to be kind, but not at the cost of your soul. Kindness is not about always saying yes, and it is never about letting people walk over your dignity. There's a reason the Quran describes the believers as firm when it's needed. Not harsh, not rude, but firm. Because without wisdom, kindness can become a trap. It can make you give and give until there's nothing left of you but regret. Sometimes, the person who keeps hurting you knows exactly what they're doing. And your constant silence isn't helping them grow. It's helping them sin without fear. If someone lies to you again and again, disrespects you behind your back, plays with your trust, and you keep smiling just to keep peace, that's not what Islam calls patience. That's surrendering your worth. And Islam never asks you to surrender your worth for the comfort of someone who doesn't fear Allah. The Prophet was the most generous of people, but even he didn't allow manipulation. He knew when to speak up. He knew when to walk away. He showed compassion, but not to the point of becoming a victim. And that's the balance we often forget. You're not sinful for setting a limit. You're not cruel for protecting your heart. You're not going against Islam when you stop giving kindness to someone who uses it as weakness. Take your pity on us and take your kindness to someone who uses it as a weakness. In fact, real kindness in Islam starts with being kind to yourself. If your heart is constantly being broken, and your smile is always forced, and you're waking up with anxiety because of someone's behavior, that's not you being kind. That's you being drained. And the religion that prioritizes peace and balance would never want you to carry a burden like that day after day in the name of goodness. Remember the verse, "Do not incline towards the wrongdoers, lest the fire touches you." That's not just about corrupt rulers or tyrants. It applies to anyone whose actions consistently drag your heart away from peace, away from clarity, away from Allah. You don't have to stay close to someone who keeps wounding you, whether they're a friend, a relative, or someone you thought you could trust. Islam doesn't make exceptions for toxicity. When you show someone kindness, it's meant to soften their heart, not feed their ego. And if your kindness is only making them more arrogant, more careless, more distant from conscience, then it's not mercy to keep giving, it's mercy to stop. It's mercy to let them face their reflection without your constant support. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away and pray for them from a distance. There is strength in boundaries. There is faith in walking away from what breaks you, even if your heart still cares. And there is reward in protecting your soul from those who take your kindness for granted. The Prophet had the softest heart, but he also knew when silence was no longer a virtue. He forgave many, but not everyone stayed close. Not everyone was meant to. Some people walked beside him, claimed to believe, said the right words, but behind their smiles were hearts full of envy, lies, or arrogance. He didn't chase them. He didn't cling to those who caused harm in the name of closeness. He taught us through his actions that keeping your circle pure isn't selfishness, it's protection. Even in the most forgiving moments, the Prophet maintained clarity. He forgave the people of Taif after they stoned him and drove him out. But he didn't invite those same people into his closest inner circle. He prayed for their guidance, yes, but from a distance. There's a message in that. Forgiveness does not mean full access. Mercy does not mean blind trust. You can wish someone well without letting them keep the same seat in your life. The Prophet was not unaware of people's true intentions. There were hypocrites around him. People who prayed beside him, spoke kindly in public, but secretly plotted against him. He never lashed out at them publicly, but he also never gave them roles of trust. He taught the believers through wisdom and action. Protect your heart, guard your space. You're allowed to treat people with dignity while keeping your soul safe from their damage. If even the most beloved of Allah didn't force himself to stay close to everyone, then why do we? Why do we keep trying to explain ourselves to people who've already decided they won't understand? Why do we keep returning to people who only take, who only care when they need something, who know how to apologize but never change? The Prophet's firmness wasn't harshness, it was mercy. Mercy for himself, mercy for the community, mercy for the truth. Because when you allow people who thrive on deceit or harm to stay close, they don't just hurt you, they hurt your peace, your direction, your connection with the people you're meant to serve. And sometimes they pull your heart away from what matters most. There's a deep kind of strength in walking away without anger, in choosing silence not out of fear, but out of wisdom. In closing the door gently without slamming it, but making sure it doesn't stay open for more harm to enter. That's what the Prophet taught through his life, not just with words, but through quiet decisions, subtle boundaries, and wise distancing. Don't let someone guilt you into thinking that distancing is arrogance. Sometimes it's your shield. Sometimes it's your worship. Sometimes it's your way of saying, my peace belongs to the one who created me, and I won't give it away to someone who doesn't fear him. When the Quran tells us to stand firmly for justice, even if it's against our own selves or those we love, it's not calling us to harshness, it's calling us to integrity. That's a difficult command. It demands courage when your heart is pulled in different directions. Sometimes the person harming you is someone you've prayed for, someone you've loved, someone who carries your secrets. And yet, Islam teaches you to choose truth even when your emotions beg you to stay quiet. It's not easy to admit that someone close has crossed a line. It's not easy to say, this is wrong, when you're used to forgiving, covering, excusing. But standing up for truth doesn't mean causing drama or chaos. It can be silent, it can be graceful. It can be in the way you no longer tolerate behavior that breaks your spirit. In the way you quietly distance from the person who refuses to change. That is a form of justice. Not in vengeance, but in dignity. The Prophet stood for justice with gentleness, but he never bent the truth to keep people happy. He spoke up when people were wrong, even when it hurt. He didn't favor people based on relationships. He didn't allow the wealthy or powerful to bend rules others had to follow. He reminded the companions that even if his own daughter were to steal, justice would be served. That's the weight of Islam's commitment to fairness. When you're being mistreated, you may start believing that staying silent is the higher path, that maybe your patience will soften them, that maybe you're being tested. And yes, patience is beautiful. But when that patience becomes a tool for others to keep harming you, that's not faith. That's fear wearing the mask of faith. Islam doesn't teach us to let wrong continue in the name of patience. It teaches us to recognize when a line has been crossed and to respond in a way that protects both your soul and theirs. Sometimes the truth will isolate you. You'll lose people. You'll feel misunderstood. But standing with the truth always brings you closer to the one who knows your heart. And that closeness outweighs every loss. Let the world misunderstand your silence, your distance, your decisions. But don't let your heart betray its sense of right and wrong just to be accepted. Justice doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it looks like stepping back. Sometimes it's a refusal to entertain lies. Sometimes it's a quiet decision that says, I will not allow this to continue, even if I have to walk alone. And in that moment, when you're standing with the truth while your heart aches, that is when you're the closest to being truly seen by the one who sees all. Not every wound should be covered with forgiveness, especially when the one who hurt you has no intention of stopping. In Islam, forgiveness is beautiful, but only when it's sincere, and only when it serves healing. You are not rewarded for allowing abuse to continue under the name of being a good Muslim. Forgiveness is an act of strength, not surrender. It comes from a position of choice, not pressure, never changing. That's not what Islam calls forgiveness. That's emotional manipulation dressed in religious words. Real forgiveness in Islam is tied to accountability. It's built on justice. You can forgive someone's past mistake after sincere repentance. But you are not required to accept ongoing harm as part of your faith. Even Allah, the most merciful, does not forgive a servant who continues to knowingly oppress others without remorse. Forgiveness from Him is wide, yes, but it is not blind. It comes with conditions, regret, correction, and a promise not to return to the wrongdoing. And if Allah holds His creation to those standards, you're allowed to hold people to them too. You're allowed to say, I forgive, but I will not allow you back into the space where you harmed me. The Prophet forgave, but he never ignored the patterns of those who repeatedly spread fitna. He knew that some people changed and others only pretended. He opened his heart to those who were sincere. He kept his distance from those who played with trust. There were individuals he did not smile at, not because he lacked mercy, but because he honored truth. Forgiveness in Islam is a door, not a prison. You're not locked into forgiving someone who is still lying, still betraying, still ignoring the damage they've done. You're not sinful for saying, I want peace, not repeated heartbreak. You're not hard-hearted for protecting yourself from people who never truly reflect on their actions. And you're not weaker in faith when you set a boundary. Some of the strongest companions of the Prophet walked away from loved ones who refused to change. They cried, they grieved, but they still chose their peace over someone else's ego. Not because they stopped caring, but because they started caring for their soul more. If someone truly deserves your forgiveness, it will show in their actions, not their words. And if you choose to forgive quietly, without returning to the same dynamic, that is still mercy. There's a quiet kind of pain that builds when you keep giving without pause, when you smile through disrespect, when you lower your gaze not out of modesty, but because you're trying to hide your disappointment. Islam teaches humility, but not self-erasure. You were never meant to be the one who constantly absorbs harm just to avoid conflict. That's not what patience is. That's not what goodness is. And the promise is that's emotional erosion disguised as virtue. There's dignity in balance. There's strength in knowing when to hold space for someone and when to step back. Islam doesn't teach you to be passive in the face of emotional damage. The Prophet taught his companions to walk gently on the earth, but also to stand tall in the face of injustice, even if it came from their own households. The calmness of a believer isn't a sign of weakness, it's a reflection of inner stability. But even the most stable heart will start to crack if it's always bending in the wrong direction. Guarding your peace is not selfish, it's necessary. You are responsible for the state of your soul. You are responsible for the energy you allow into your life. If someone constantly drains you, questions your intentions, manipulates your goodness, or never considers how their words affect you, why do you keep handing them your kindness? Why do you feel guilty for stepping away? It's not arrogance to protect your emotional well-being. It's self-respect. And that is deeply rooted in faith. Islam values the heart. It's the most sacred part of you. The Prophet said, there's a piece of flesh in the body that, if sound, the whole body is sound. That's your heart. Do you really believe your Lord would want you to keep handing your heart to those who keep bruising it? Sometimes, protecting yourself is the only way to grow closer to Allah. When someone's presence begins to distract you from your purpose, when their words linger more in your mind than the verses of the Quran, when your nights are spent nursing wounds they left behind, it's time to reclaim your peace. You were created to worship with presence, not to live in emotional survival. Letting go doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've honored what's sacred within you. It means you've chosen to heal, not to hide. You don't have to explain your boundaries. You don't have to justify your silence. Allah knows what you endured. Allah knows what you gave. And Allah knows when walking away was your only way of protecting what's left of you. Sometimes that step back is what leads you back to Him. Kindness is not meant to feel like suffocation. Islam's supposed to be one-sided, where you keep showing up and they keep walking away. Islam teaches kindness with depth, but it also teaches that the relationship between people is meant to be built on justice, sincerity, and mutual care. When kindness only benefits one person while the other silently bleeds, what you have isn't goodness, it's imbalance. And Islam is a religion of balance. The Prophet was the kindest to walk this earth, but his kindness always served truth. He was generous with those who were honest. He stood with those who were sincere. But he didn't allow people to take advantage of his gentleness. There were moments he turned away, moments he walked past, moments he remained silent. Not out of weakness, but because his heart only opened fully to those who valued it. That's the standard. Not coldness, not cruelty, but quiet wisdom. You were not created to carry the emotional weight of those who refuse to acknowledge their impact. You were created to carry the emotional weight of those who refuse to acknowledge their impact. If someone only shows up when they need you, only speaks gently when they want something, only remembers your kindness when they fear your absence, that's not a connection. That's control. And the faith that taught you to give also taught you to notice when your giving becomes a tool used against you. True kindness in Islam uplifts both hearts. It nurtures the one who gives and the one who receives. You feel honored, not drained. You feel seen, not invisible. You feel safe, not confused. If your kindness only makes someone more careless with your feelings, then you're not helping them grow. You're enabling a pattern they have no reason to change. There's a reason the Prophet said, "None of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself." That's not just about gifts and prayers. That's about consistency. It's about effort. It's about not being the only one holding the bridge while the other burns it down. Love for your brother includes not making him feel replaceable. It includes not leaving him alone in moments you wouldn't want to face by yourself. Islam wants you to build relationships that reflect your Creator's mercy, not people's manipulations, where love feels like safety and respect is not begged for, and presence is not used as leverage. That's safe, that under pressure goes against legions and repellents and is not used as leverage, where kindness is answered with gratitude, not entitlement, where the hearts on both sides are nourished. That's the type of connection that leaves behind reward, not regret. If you've been giving without receiving, loving without being seen, sacrificing while being forgotten, it's okay to pause. It's okay to breathe. It's okay to say, this isn't what Allah intended for me. Sometimes walking away is the first real act of kindness you've shown to yourself in years.